Someone who knows John Herdman well, played under him, and also won an Olympic bronze medal. That would be Kaylyn Kyle, now turned broadcaster. Really appreciate you taking the time here on Soccer North. But I have to pick your brain from a player's perspective. We've already talked about Alphonso Davies, Max Kripo, the injuries they're dealing with. There have been other international stars whose World Cup could be in jeopardy. How stressful is it for a player when you know a big tournament's coming on up and you need to stay healthy?
Yeah, it's honestly probably one of the worst feelings in the world, but it's also a different beast this time around because the World Cup is getting played mid-season for most of these players that play in European leagues. Obviously, MLS just finishing, losing Max in the final was absolutely heartbreaking and devastating, to say the least. These players are literally looking at this in a different way because for me personally, I would have loved to have seen them take probably an extra 2 weeks off leading into this World Cup due to the fact that there is so many games leading into it. I think they have only 2 weeks before the World Cup. So as a player, you're going in, and I know this sounds so bad because they get paid multi-millions of dollars, but it's almost like, do I maybe just fake an injury? Because the World Cup, I know that sounds so bad, but the World Cup only comes around every 4 years. I know that there was a lot of talk around Alphonso Davies and Bayern Munich and, Bayern Munich overusing him and overplaying him. Well, let's be realistic here. They're paying his contract. They don't care about the national team. They don't care if they do well as a nation at the World Cup. They want to lift titles. They want to lift trophies. They want to get to Champions League finals. So you can't blame these clubs for playing these players.
They want to stay healthy. They also want to be match fit. So we know that the men actually have 2 friendlies before the World Cup begins. The game against Bahrain, we know, is for a lot of those players whose seasons have ended, mostly Major League Soccer players. And then there's that game on November 17th where they're hoping a lot of the European squad will be there. What are you hoping to see in those 2 games? Like, what are you looking out for that will tell you something about Canada as they get ready to play Belgium?
That they stay healthy. I think we already know what we know of Canada. We know that they're well organized. We know that they have some of the top players in the world. We know that defensively, we're probably one of the most adaptable teams in CONCACAF. They proved that in CONCACAF. So for me, I've seen what I've needed to see from Canada. You look at Jonathan David playing over in Lille in the French league, and he's on fire at the moment. So the important players are playing so well. Alphonso Davies absolutely on fire in the Bundesliga. So you look at the players that need to step up for Canada to do well, and they have been. So these games for me is like you just alluded to, the players in maybe Major League Soccer that got knocked out early, weren't in the playoff race, didn't have those extra games that just finished last weekend to get those 90-minute match fitness performances and maybe give the players in Europe a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a break, maybe get them 10 minutes of a run out at the end of it. But for me, I think I've seen everything I've seen in Canada. Obviously, you want to win these games. You want to put the ball into the back of the net. You don't want to concede because you want to go into the World Cup in the best mindset possible.
And we know that there have been a lot of calls for change at Canada Soccer, and you're someone who's dealt with them when you were a player, and I'm sure continued to do so as you continue to cover the national team. What are some changes you would like to see? Maybe even some personnel, former players, I don't know, some other, alumni type of group that's set up. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth because maybe these are some of the things I would like to see. But what are just some of the things you would like to see, those changes with Canada Soccer to really push it forward?
Yeah, look, I've been really vocal about it. And I think it's the one point in my career where I've been able to, because when you're playing for the national team, you can't really be vocal in top change. You can be vocal in the little things, the fights behind the scenes. But when it comes to change from the top, I've been very vocal about that because speaking to former players, speaking to current players, speaking to people that are working in and around the scenes of it, there's no trust. You can't go online and you can't buy jerseys. And everyone says, the money, that the men are being selfish in that, asking for that money. That happens everywhere around the world. But you have to do the business model correctly. You have to have jerseys that you're able to sell. That's where a lot of your profit comes from. So when your business aspect isn't right and your business aspect isn't progressing the way it should, it's time to give your head a shake. It's just, for me, I'm like, it's like banging my head against a brick wall because there's no answers. There's no communication, there's no transparency. And for me, it doesn't feel like anything's changing. So for me, you've got to start from the top. You've got to clean stuff out. You've got to have former players that, are doing business school, that are qualified for this. Women, men, I'm not saying it has to be women. I'm not saying it has to be men. People that are willing to put Canada Soccer first and put these players first and put the organization first instead of putting themselves first. I think that is the most important thing. And it's not like we don't have the people to do it.
Well, the spotlight is on them, and it's on them because current players and former players like yourself keep the conversation going. So we appreciate everything that you continue to do for the sport, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Andi.
If you enjoyed this content, don't miss anything that we're putting out on Soccer North. Be sure to download the CBC Gem app, head to the App Store, and hey, it's free.